Let's now return to our top story, and Victorians are in day 2 of their 7-day lockdown, with 5 new locally acquired cases of coronavirus recorded in the past 24 hours. And many non-essential businesses have been forced to close their doors for the duration of the lockdown, and this time without the support from the federal government's JobKeeper program.
Let's bring in our politician panel now. We're joined by Liberal MP Jason Falinski and also by Burney, who is the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians. Good morning to both of you. It's great to have you on this morning. On the vaccination rollout, Jason, the Prime Minister has said repeatedly, this is not a race, it's not a competition. But when we're seeing these outbreaks in Victoria and the lockdowns as a result of the outbreaks, there is an urgency. Is Victoria now paying for the government's lack of urgency on this?
No, I don't think so, Jo. I mean, it's a good question. The fact is that we need to roll this out as sensibly as we possibly can and make sure that we do it in a meaningful and proper way, and we aim to protect those people most vulnerable to start with. There is no doubt that the vaccine rollout has had its setbacks. The decision by the medical expert panel to restrict AstraZeneca to people over 50, unlike other jurisdictions where it was only restricted to people under 30. Also, we've had the situation where the Europeans only shipped 700,000 of the 3.8 million doses that we ordered. All these things have created problems, but despite that, we are still further ahead in our rollout at this time than any other country in the world, with the exception of the UK and Israel.
Burney, what were your thoughts? You know, we know that Victoria's acting Premier has said that, has placed the blame on the delay in the vaccine rollout. Is it the vaccine rollout, or is Victoria just unlucky?
Well, good morning and happy Reconciliation Week, Fazia and Jo. The federal government had 2 jobs: quarantine and vaccine rollout. The vaccine rollout has been chaotic. People are confused, and Victoria is deeply, deeply traumatised, because this is their 4th lockdown. I was in Melbourne about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and talking to people, you came to understand just how deeply affected people are psychologically by the last lockdown, and to find themselves this week back in the same situation. You have to say that the Prime Minister and the federal government have bungled the rollout of the vaccine mightily.
Jason, when you talk about the issues with the vaccination rollout, including the issues with supply and the recommendations you mentioned with the AstraZeneca being only for people over 50, yes, there have been those factors, but also the messaging from the government. When the Prime Minister says it's not a race, it's not a competition, that lack of urgency, Greg Hunt's comments last week about potentially people waiting until other types of vaccines are available later this year, hasn't there been a problem with the messaging from the government?
Well, Jo, what would you like our message to be?
Well,
everyone panic? It's chaos out there. Quick, run, overwhelm the health system.
No, perhaps
I mean, of course we need people to take this seriously.
And that it's an urgent thing, that yes, we don't have many cases, but it's still very important.
Jo, where the government has said over and over again that the only road out of this global pandemic, which we are still in the middle of, is the vaccine. But, you know, running around with our hair on fire, saying the sky's about to fall down, is only going to have one impact, and that is going to create chaos. Well, what are you suggesting then?
Well,
where have we said that this isn't urgent? Where has the federal government not stressed that this is important?
When the government says it's not a race, it's not a competition, what does the Prime Minister mean by that?
Well, when he says it's not a race, he means that we need to do this deliberately, sensibly, and make sure that we look after the people who are most vulnerable, make sure that they get the vaccine first. That we are very lucky in Australia. We've had less than 1,000 deaths from COVID-19, and each of those deaths has been a tragedy. But compared to any other nation in the world, that's a remarkable outcome. So we have the luxury of being able to roll this vaccine out sensibly, and to do it in a manner, to do it in a staged fashion, that the people who need it first can get it first. And if you want to wait, if that's something you want to do, it is not something we're advising, you can. Because we are very lucky to live in a country where we manage to get world best health outcomes and economic outcomes, it must be said, in this vaccine. I don't think it's fair to say in any way, shape or form, and I know this is a narrative that is developing in some parts of Australia, that somehow the federal government said this wasn't important. Let me be very clear. The federal government has said from day one, our only way out, our only capacity to reopen this nation and to rejoin the world is by everyone getting vaccinated.
It's not just concerns about public health, there's also concerns about income as well. This is the first time that there is a lockdown, a major lockdown, without financial assistance from the federal government. Jason Falinski, do you think that the government does need to start looking at tailored packages, financial assistance perhaps, when it comes to snap lockdowns, or is that an issue for state governments instead?
Look, Fazzy, that's a really good question, and I think the answer is that all three levels of government have to play their part. And indeed, where there are local outbreaks, so I come from the northern beaches of Sydney, and we saved Christmas this year, so you're welcome. But, you know, that required probably a very localised response that was possibly best delivered by the local government. Where you have statewide, then I think the state government should probably take the lead on that. But I mean, I have a graph here that shows the black and the red lines are the level of support that the federal government has given, and obviously the level of support the state governments have given are down the bottom. So the federal government has done the heavy lifting throughout this pandemic and will continue to do so. But I think Australians expect all three levels of government to work together to ensure that people are protected, both financially as well as in a health sense.
Linda, Burney, what's your response to that? Is this more the area of the state governments who make the calls on the lockdowns, or should the federal government be intervening here?
The federal government should be intervening. Labor argued that the withdrawal of JobKeeper was way too early, and I think that what we're seeing in Victoria bears that out. The businesses in Victoria, and I've listened very carefully to this debate, are absolutely terrified that they're not going to survive, that they're going to be dreadfully impacted, because for this lockdown, unlike the last one, there was JobKeeper. The federal government is responsible for that. I hear what Jason is saying about the three tiers of government, but at the end of the day, there is a responsibility for the federal government in terms of income support. And Melbourne and Victoria are now in a 7-day lockdown. It could be longer. There's 35 cases today. It could be longer, and there is no financial assistance to keep people connected to work.
Quarantine facilities was another issue that is very central to this topic as well, and the government has now said that it will be looking at Victoria's proposal to set up a separate site outside of the urban areas to supplement the hotel quarantine facilities that are in Victoria. Jason Falinski, why has it taken so long for the government to finally capitulate, to agree that there is a need for a separate quarantine system that will supplement current quarantine systems?
Yeah, Fazia, I've got to say I don't agree with this. The Prime Minister has said throughout the week that our hotel quarantine system has been 99.9% successful. I don't think that it is something that we need to go about creating a new kind of specialised facility. This pandemic has probably got another year to run, but I think the systems that we have in place have worked very well in New South Wales and in other places.
Despite the fact that many health officials and health experts around the world, not just here in Australia as well, are saying that there is a concern about aerosol transmission, there is a concern that hotels are not built for quarantine facilities.
Yeah, and look, I understand that those health experts have said that, but at the end of the day, you know, facts have to play a part in this debate. And when you've got a system that has been successful to 99.9%, you have to wonder whether it is necessary for us to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a specialised facility. But nonetheless, that is something that the federal government is looking at with the Victorian government, and I'm sure there'll be other state governments that come forward with similar proposals.
There's so much to talk about with this issue, but Linda Burney did say Happy Reconciliation Week to us this morning, and Happy Reconciliation Week to you as well. What are you reflecting on, Linda, this Reconciliation Week?
Well, I was in Adelaide yesterday and was able to be part of an announcement by the Labor Party, Peter Malinauskas and Kaya Ma, $1 million towards reflecting Aboriginal people and Aboriginal life in public monuments. That was fabulous. What I'm reflecting on is that the theme for Reconciliation Week is it's not just a word, we need action. And every single Australian, no matter what we do, who we are, where we're from, can have a role in reconciliation. It's so important to this nation, and I am so proud to be part of a party that supports the Uluru Statement in full.
Jason Falinski, what are your thoughts as we go into Reconciliation Week this week?
Well, it won't surprise you to hear, Fazia, that I couldn't have said it better than Linda just said it then. I wish everyone a happy Reconciliation Week as well, particularly people like Linda who have been such brave leaders in this area, not only just in our parliament but in our community, along with Ken Wyatt, along with people like Warren Snowden, and Julian Lisa. And Andrew Bragg wouldn't forgive me if I didn't mention that he's just written a book on this whole issue. So, yeah.
All right, Jason Falinski and Linda Burney, it's great to have you on this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is time now for a check of the weather now with Rebecca Amer.
A cold front is moving across the southwest land division and bringing with it a period of heavy showers, thunderstorms and gusty winds for parts of Western Australia this morning. A vigorous push of southerly air along the New South Wales coast follows a cold front which has moved across the Tasman Sea, and that's directing strong cold southerly winds and large surf for parts of Queensland, New South Wales and Victorian coastlines. In Queensland today, large and powerful surf conditions are